always happy to have Kate DiCamillo sitting down with us to talk about a new book. This one's called Flora and Ulysses, the Illuminated Adventures.
Correct.
Welcome.
It's a mouthful of a title.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And the illustrations, always an important part
Yep.
of your books. This one is a little bit different in that they're like comic strips in the books.
Yes. It's the story of a girl and a squirrel, right? And the squirrel has powers, superhero powers. So Chris Paul, the art director, said, what if every time he does something super heroic, we go into comics? And I was like, that's brilliant. But I didn't think of it. I'm like, I know a good idea when I hear one. So I was like, great. So I turned it in as just straight text, and then I backed out of those blocks where he's doing that and wrote it more like in present tense, more like in a screenplay form for the illustrator, Keith.
Right, and I should say that the illustrator for this is K.G. Campbell.
Right, Keith. But it's fun to say KG, so let's say it. It sounds operative, you know.
Another thing that I've always loved about all of your books is the names. They come to you
The only
somewhere.
part that's easy, I've said that to you before,
Yes.
Everything else is hard, but the names literally roll off my tongue, out my pen. Yeah.
When and how did Flora Belle Buckman first come to you?
Well, it's a long story. It wasn't Flora that arrived first, it was the squirrel that arrived first. And the squirrel arrived in literally like on the front steps of my house. There was a squirrel who was doing the work of dying. And it was just like I kept on going out there and looking at him, like breathing heavily on the steps and like wringing my hands. And I called a friend who lives a block and a half away from me, the sweetest of all of my friends. It's like, what do I do? She's like, do you have a shovel? It's like, yeah, I have a shovel. And she's like, and an old t-shirt? It's like, yeah.
Oh.
And I'm like backing away from the squirrel. So the kindest person I know is like telling me that the squirrel should be whacked over the head with a shovel. So it was traumatic for me, right? And much like E.B. White in Death of a Pig, that wonderful essay where he starts to think about ways to save a pig, you start to think about ways to save a squirrel. So the squirrel showed up first, and then there has to be somebody to save the squirrel, and that's Flora Belle Buckman.
So where did the inspiration come from?
I think that this is one of those weird things where, you know, the book gets done, you work, and then it goes out into the world. And so like about a month ago, the final pages, you know, where it's loose, those came in, and then I started passing that around to my friends, and everybody is like, this is you. And I'm like, really?
I thought there was a little Kate in there.
You're waiting for that answer.
I didn't
and it's
think
like,
you'd
to me,
say
it's
that,
a
though. I had no idea you would say that was you. But it felt
you're
like
right behind your own back. I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. And so now when I look at Keith's picture, it's very kind of has a, you know, I get a vertigo kind of thing, because I think that's me as a kid, even though I never wore glasses. But now, so yeah, that's me, a perky curmudgeon. A cynic who isn't really a cynic.
No, not at all. For anyone who follows you and reads your Facebook posts and the other things that you do, there's not a lot of cynicism really there.
No, but there's an overlay of cynicism.
Maybe.
Yeah, but it's not really who I am.
Hard for me to give you that, but rather than debate, okay. There's another really fun little element to this. There's sort of a vacuum plays a major role. There's an obsession with vacuum cleaners.
Right, there is an obsession with vacuum cleaners, which is not my obsession. Oh, it was my mother's. She had an Electrolux that she thought the world of. And so for the last, my mom I grew up in Florida, and I'm in Minneapolis now, and for the last 5 years of her life, my mom was in Minnesota with me. And she would occasionally say, I wonder what's going to happen to the vacuum cleaner when I'm gone.
Oh, she's worried about it.
Yeah, and it's just like, I'm sure the vacuum cleaner will be fine. Well, this is another where the story came from kind of thing. So she passed away. She had a cat. So I didn't want to bring the vacuum cleaner into my house because I have a cat allergy. So the vacuum cleaner's in the garage. Every day when I pulled in there, I see the vacuum cleaner and think, I'm letting my mom down. I knew I couldn't give it away, but she really wanted somebody to appreciate it, and I'm not appreciating it. So there's some vacuum cleaner guilt, right? And this book starts with an amazing, incredible indoor-outdoor multi-terrain Ulysses 2000X, a vacuum cleaner
It is a
that
fine
would be out
vacuum
of my
cleaner.
mother's dreams,
Yeah.
right? It literally is in charge, and we're not giving too much away to say that it vacuums up the squirrel. So that's it. There's the interior shot of my brain. You take a squirrel dying on the front step, you take my mother worrying about her vacuum cleaner, and this is what you get.
And you knew those things would go together somehow.
No, I didn't. I didn't know that.
But there were two things that you were definitely going to try to put together.
Well, I wasn't even aware of putting them together when I way after this is finished, Jennifer Roberts, who's the publicity person at Campbell, is like, okay, now we need to, where did it come from? It's like, I don't know. So I started going back through all my notebooks and I pieced it together. It's like, oh, here's the squirrel on the steps, that was bothering me. Here's the vacuum cleaner in the garage, that was bothering me. And somehow my strange brain, and don't nod when I say strange
Yes, your
brain.
strange brain.
It puts it all together.
Your strange brain is beloved, though. I remember when Magician's Elephant came out, you talked about how ideas came to you and how they're just like a crashing thud into your life.
Yeah.
And it really did remind me of the whole story of the Magician's Elephant, which is an elephant crashing through the ceiling.
Right, it's like
which
that.
is strange brain stuff.
Right, it
there's no
is.
doubt
And
about
it's
it.
not really explainable. I mean, as much as you talk about it, the more you talk about it, the more mysterious it gets. And I
guess when you talk about it, it does seem unusual. And yet, kids, readers, anybody who reads your stuff goes right along for that ride, never question it for a minute. No one ever said, what a strange thing, a China rabbit.
Right.
That was at the bottom of the ocean. That doesn't
who
make
doesn't
sense.
talk and
Yes.
doesn't walk, but yet there's a whole book about
Right.
it.
Nobody ever said that was strange.
But it is strange, Rich. It's strange.
I'll give you that. But it comes together in a way that only Kate DiCamillo could do. And with Flora and Ulysses, you seem to have done it again, and you've pulled together these really disparate elements. When you were writing the book, and you're midway through this fun collection of characters, didn't know the comics were going to come yet, but did you feel like, I'm on it, I've got it, this is feeling good now?
Well, that's a bit optimistic for somebody like me. There were moments after repeated rewrites when I would still laugh as I was working on it, and I thought, I don't know that I'm onto something, but I think at least it's funny and my heart is in it. You never know if it's working or not. You never know. You don't know, but it's just inching along and it's filled with doubt. But I did laugh a lot as I was.
That's fun. All of your books you bring so many different perspectives now. Your personality is coming to us in Mercy, Watson, this wonderful pig, and all the characters there, in Flora and Ulysses. Now we read all these wonderful little notes you put on Facebook. You're finding all new ways to sort of take that imagination and creativity and deliver it out to people.
Well, Facebook has been, I always have a notebook with me. So I journal in the morning and then in the afternoon, and I use an afternoon notebook, but I always have a notebook for whatever I might hear or see when I'm out in the world, and it gets jotted down in there. So Facebook is just like, that's my notebook, and it's nice to put some of that on there and to connect with people that way. And it's just what I see in the world, and it's nice that you like it, but it's pretty boring. It's like, I saw this, I watched this, I took a picture yesterday at Library Way, heading into the public way. They've got all those plates in the sidewalk, and there's a wonderful quote from E.B. White, and I took a picture of that, and it's great to have a place to put it. I'll put it on Facebook. I love it.
So the comics in here are really fun, or the illustrations. There's a mix of illustrations and comics. Were you a comic reader when you were a kid?
Peanuts, which is not your typical kind of, but my brother and I were both obsessed with Peanuts. And that really, I have to say, influenced my world view. And there's kind of like this...
How?
There's a broken-hearted... they're sad. but they're also joyous. And I didn't know that I was going to get comics in this book, but I was so aware of wanting to capture that feeling of this is the way things are, and it breaks your heart, but it's also kind of funny that I got so much from Peanuts when I was a kid. I always felt like Charles Schulz was telling me the truth, you know, and sometimes he would make me laugh as he was telling me the truth. I think it really shaped a lot of who I am, and I didn't realize that until I was working on this. So
It is lovely to have you here again, Kate. And it's terrifying. That's the word of the day for you always. But, but as terrifying as it is,
yeah.
we're so glad this is what you do. Thanks for joining us today.
Can I shake your hand?
Of course.
Yeah. All right.
Great to see you.